Check, check, 1, 2, gear 1, gear 2, Jorb 1, Jorb 2. Hello, my name is Jorb. I love gear. I'm in Berlin for SuperBooth 2023. I'm going to talk about the gear that impressed me the most, the stuff that excited me the most about seeing. And I got some direct audio from the booth, so you can hear a little bit of these as well. But none of the examples are that great, and this video looks probably funny. You're wondering why. I didn't bring any camera gear. This is my phone, a Roland Go Mixer Pro, and of course the very same SM58. I'm trying to make the video making process as easy as possible so I can do it while I'm here on my laptop, which is not great. I didn't bring my camera because I got cheap flights and I only had a personal item. I had the one bag, no carry-on or anything. So I didn't want to waste space on camera gear, and all that sort of like made me think about this can be easy and still be fun and interesting, and I can still communicate with you just as effectively. And I just need to spend less time worrying about the camera and my tripod and an audio recorder and all that. Plus, it still sounds good because the Go Mixer is great. Anyway, no travel vlogging, Jorb. Let's talk about the gear. So I didn't get any audio of the first thing I want to talk about, the Synth Steampipe. It's like physical modeling of wind instruments or wind and air and pressure moving through some physical body. And I played with it a bunch, and I could never quite figure out a way to articulate what it was doing or explain to you or explain it to anybody, you know, and say, when you change this knob, this is what it's modeling. I never quite figured that out. I didn't really talk to anybody at the booths either, and that room was really, really loud, hard for me to focus. So that's all I'm going to say about it. I'm really excited that they're doing something different. I really want to try it when it's done. I'll put up a picture, and I'll link to, I think Reverb did a video, which is great. You get some good sounds out of there. And I think some element of that hardware is a prototype, maybe the labeling or the controls they give you or their ranges. Something about that unit is prototypical. So Synth has always done cool stuff, and this is a little closer to my domain than the drum machines or a lot of the Eurorack stuff. So really, really excited to see what this turns into. Cool. That one is easy. I'm looking down at my laptop, totally nondescriptly. I'll pair these next two things together. So the Melbourne Instruments Nina. The motorized faders thing, a lot of people asked me to check that out. I was convinced it was just a gimmick, and it was expensive because they just needed to put those little motors in there. But after actually having my hands on it and manipulating it for a little bit, I realized a few things. It sounds really, really good. It reminds me, it's multi-timbral. I believe it's a hybrid architecture, but a lot of the sound generation is analog. It reminded me of the Nord Lead 2 that I love so very much. It has these features that make the multi-timbrality really, really valuable, splits and layers and things like that. But I'm off track. It sounds good, period. That's that first thought. The motor faders are more than a gimmick. So the first time it like clicked with me that this is a valuable interface, when I hit the button to change the mod matrix, all of the parameters went to noon, went to the middle. And okay, I understand. I pick envelope 1. The amount you see on the knob is the modulation amount of envelope 1 to whatever parameter, and envelope 2 in the LFOs. So that was the first click of like, oh, this is a user interface choice. It was clear that it was more than just never losing your place as you change presets. It was a way to visualize more information. And it has patch morphing. So there's an A and a B and a knob that'll fade between them. There's a setting that'll have every parameter change to its sort of relative position as you blend between those two programmed sounds. Those two things, the mod matrix and then that, really proved to me that they had thought, you know, what really is capable with these motorized faders. Very, very impressed with that. And overall, it sounded quite good. It's the bottom line for an instrument, isn't it? Next, the Expressive E Osmose. I believe the keyboard is called the Osmose. I'd seen this all over, and if you guys have seen me play keys, you know, I will often default to my right hand doing stuff and my left hand on the pitch and the mod wheel. I learned viola originally. I played viola for a long time, so I'm used to having expression that way. And this, using a keyboard, you want to do the higher notes, you know, with the bending and the wiggling and things like that. So it's a little unnatural to me to try and think that way. But when subtlety matters, it's fun to really sort of investigate the parameters of it. So I was impressed with the way it felt. I loved everything about the key bed, how subtle you could be, how much aftertouch mattered, how much the pitch bending. I did have to change the pitch bending to like less than a semitone, like a half of a step, every time that I was going to wiggle it back and forth, because it was too much otherwise. And I really liked, I think I said this with Poly Aftertouch on the Hydrasynth, if you just put a chord and sort of shift your fingers and move your hand around, you get these subtleties, and it becomes very valuable for things like that, for nuance. But I didn't like the way you controlled sounds. I believe there's a desktop editor as well, and people told me that was better, but trying to edit sounds on that little panel was not good. It wasn't responsive. The interface didn't make a lot of sense. There were a lot of knobs for navigating different sections, and I don't think really needed to be there. So, understandably so, the keyboard was the focus and the most impressive part. And many of the presets sounded great, and were showing off these features in a way, that it made sense why they were there or why they had included them. But really, the interface for changing parameters or settings was not responsive and not laid out in a way that made sense to me. So, I like it. It sort of solidified in my brain that it is the controller tech that is the big draw. Not to say that there weren't cool sounds. There certainly were, but interacting it just from the hardware unit, which is the way I would use it, is really not a good experience. That's it, though. Overall, still really impressed with it. And then two more things I wasn't really ready to see, but really impressed me. The wofi from Kiviak, or maybe vice versa, but it's this little sampling keyboard. And there's a speaker grill on the right side and a microphone on the left side, and it has sort of the energy of an SK1, and it has this synthesis architecture around it, so it's subtractive. There's everything you'd expect from virtual analog. It's envelopes controlling a filter and a VCA. The beginning of it is this character section that lets you sort of change the way the sample sounds at the very beginning, and it's machine emulation of some vintage samplers, sampling rates and bit depth. Plus, after all of that, there's this like granular texturizer. So instead of a normal, maybe I'll say traditional delay and reverb, it's this granular effect for adding space. All of that really, really cool. There's some cool play modes, pitch shifting and time stretching, all sorts of really, really cool things in a keyboard sampler. And like I said, it had the energy of an SK1 with like a really fascinating architecture around it. So I'm not really sure how far along that project is. I'll link to all of these things below. If that one's a Kickstarter or something, you'll see the link to that as well. Really excited to see where that goes, because simple instruments that are doing interesting things is fun. And as much as I like the complicated new stuff, I like something that leads you to sort of creative, interesting outcomes. I like stuff like that too. And the very last thing, the Electron Analog Heat Plus FX. But it's the analog heat, which is a bunch of different distortion types, a bunch of different gain types, plus an analog filter. We've seen that. We're familiar with that. This added a bunch of sound shaping effects, sound designing effects, and understanding where it was, in the product line, and understanding what they expected people to be using it with wasn't clear to me until I sat down and I kept doing more demos because they had more setups with it. But it was like, I got to the booth and they had like a kalimba plugged into it, and I don't know the Electron stuff super well, so I went to that station, instead of something with a Digitact or a Digitone, because I can pluck a kalimba and just listen to the effects. And I found it very easy to navigate. I found a lot of the effects were just flat out good, and you can modulate them. There's LFOs and envelope followers. The last thing I did, which I'll show the demo now, it's this cheap little Casio keyboard. I think it was SA1 or something. But it was that plugged in using the envelope follower to trigger a filter movement and having reverb and delay. And I realized that that's sort of things I do all the time to bring older instruments or cheap, unique, nuanced stuff into a modern architecture is run it through effects. And so to have that sort of use case laid out in front of me by the booth made it clear that, that's the sort of thing I might want to use the Heat Plus FX for. For some people, I can see, here's an Electron architecture layer, an Electron control layer for instruments that aren't Electron. And that's a good way for you to incorporate that with your Digitact and your Syntact and your Digitone. Or for other people who were interested in the analog heat, here's the analog heat plus a bunch of cool sound shaping effects. Awesome. I love effects more than anything. You guys know that. So seeing something like that, really, really exciting. Great job, Electron. I hope to get my hands on that a little bit more. One last thing, and this is another prototype. Korg had this sort of acoustic hybrid thing. And you guys know I like electric pianos. And so it was this feedback loop with an electromagnet and, amplifying certain resonances and all sorts of things. It was playing with an acoustic, like a tuning fork, almost like a tine. Really, really cool. Totally a prototype. I have no idea what this could or would look like if they ended up making it into a real product. But I love seeing new, innovative stuff like that. And that's sort of the last thing I want to end with. Walking around SuperBooth and seeing things like this and other things that I've never heard of. There's a lot of innovation going on in the electronic music space, and people are excited and experimental, and overall passion is what brings all those manufacturers here. On some level, you probably aren't getting into this just for the money. Anybody who's making synthesizers or effects or Yorak, all of that, they love what they're doing, or, that's behind some layer of their involvement in this. And I'm very happy to be here because it's the same for me. And here we go. Jorb was going to do it. The best synth at SuperBooth was the friends we made along the way. It's so nice to be here with other YouTubers and meet some of the people who work for the companies that I've worked with, to just realize that, hey, we're all here, we're all together because we love the same thing. And I'm hugely grateful that I talked enough on the internet that I'm in Berlin talking to people I appreciate and people I respect and people I look up to about stuff that I love. So it's an amazing opportunity to be here. This was some Patreon money, and I'm sure you guys saw the Roland S1 video, which I'm very proud of. But getting that sponsored right now was a godsend to help me cover the price of getting to Berlin. So very happy to be here. It happened because I've been talking on the internet so much, and I'm grateful to you guys for making it happen and everybody else involved. Yeah, so there you go. SuperBooth was wonderful. Tried a bunch of stuff. I know this was snappy. I'm trying to get this done so I can do some more stuff tonight. There you go. I'm excited to see where all this ends up. Appreciate you watching. My name's Jorb. I love gear. That includes SuperBooth. Thanks for watching. Cheers and so long.